Hello, everyone, and welcome to Coffee with Coaches. I'm Susan Clarine, the EI coach, and my guest today is Gail Golden. And Gail is here to talk about her new book called Curating a Life. And I'm very excited to hear more from Gail about this. And if you've been reading my blog, you know, Coffee with Coaches is really just about hearing how successful coaches like Gail have made their way in life and found success. And I think, Gail, curating your life is a perfect topic for that. And hearing from you and your perspective, all the wonderful lessons that you've learned along the way to share with others. So, welcome. And anything else that you'd like to add to your introduction?
Oh, well, thank you so much. I'm just delighted to have the opportunity to be here. Susan and I have known each other for a long time, and there's a lot of mutual respect there, which is great. And yeah, the book came out in April, and it's doing well, which is very exciting. And I'm looking forward to a chance to talk with you some about what's in the book and what's not in the book. So let's go.
Very good. So, Gail, I think one of the things that I always really admire and respect about you is you're really open to learning and always interested and curious about things. So, I'm curious to hear from you as you think back on your career, which has been a very successful career. What advice comes to mind for you when you think about coaches who are starting out? Maybe just been in business a couple years. And what are some lessons learned that you think are really important that you'd like to share with them?
Sure, I'm happy to do that. I'm going to start by just talking a little bit about my career trajectory, which is not typical for most coaches. I started out, got a PhD in clinical psychology, and I was a psychotherapist for over 20 years. I built my own psychotherapy practice, working with individuals and couples and families and teaching course at the local university, and loved it. And it's very hard work, took a very long time to get to be good at it. I got to be good at it. And then after about 20 years, I found that I was getting bored with it, that I was feeling stale. The new clients that came in just seemed a lot like clients I had already dealt with. And I thought, oh dear, this is not good. It's not good for my clients. They deserve a therapist who's really fully engaged. And it's not good for me. I need to be doing work that's challenging me and exciting me. But I really valued what I had learned about psychology, about how to help people change, about what makes people tick. So I thought, where else could I use what I've learned? And I got interested in the notion of psychologists who work with business leaders to help them do their jobs better, help organizations, help individual leaders. That seemed like a really interesting place to move. And I guess that's where I hit problem number one, which was I didn't know beans about business. I mean, I had run my own small professional practice. I didn't come from a business family. And in fact, I really didn't know anything about the world of senior executives. So I think one of the first smart decisions that I made was I went back to school and got an MBA. Okay. I spent 2 years in full-time school as well as running my practice full-time for 2 years. So that was a busy 2 years. It blew my head wide open. I have no question that I'm a much better coach because I took the time to really understand the world of business. And so I guess maybe out of that comes my first thought, which is I think to be a really high-powered, effective coach, you need to know a whole bunch about psychology and you need to know a whole bunch about business. And there are people who know a bunch about business and not much about psychology, and people who know a bunch about psychology and not much about business. And it's up to them then to fill that gap because you're going to bring best value to your clients if you know both. So then I get my MBA. I have PhD, MBA, woo, good for me. We were living in Canada at the time. We moved back to Chicago, which was home for us. And I got a job with a consulting firm. And I knew that I was starting in a new field. I knew I had a learning curve ahead of me. But I sort of thought, I got 20 plus years under my belt. I mean, how hard can this be? Well, 6 months into that first year, I was beside myself. I mean, I was so bad at this job. I didn't know what I was doing. I was making it all up, and it was just overwhelming. And one night I was just thinking, oh my, I had this good life. Why did I do this to myself? And I thought, Gail, you had a choice. You could be bored or you could be scared. You chose scared. And somehow that put the pieces into place for me. That if you're going to do something like this, count on it. You're going to be scared. And that was, I wasn't running my own, I had a paycheck coming in at that point. 9 years later, no, sorry, 5.5 years later, when I then started my own company, I got to be scared all over again, because although I had learned how to be a consultant in those 5.5 years, once again, I was dealing with, I built something from scratch here. Believe me, I was scared again. So scared comes with the territory.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you need to know that. Being scared and doubting yourself. Even somebody who's highly qualified and good at what she or he is doing is going to feel that way. And I guess the other thing I would say that was a really profound learning for me, especially when I started my second business, which was in 2009. 2009, not a good time to be starting a business.
Mm-hmm.
The help that people stepped forward and offered to me from unexpected directions was so valuable to me and so heartwarming. And so my other, I think, big piece of advice for people starting out is feel free to ask for help. People can always say no, but they won't know what you need unless you ask. And secondly, when help gets offered, take it, even if you can't see any way to pay it back. Take it, and then maybe you won't be able to pay it back, but you'll be able to pay it forward, which is what I've been doing ever since. Somebody comes to me, they're starting a business, I'm going to give them whatever help I can, because my business is based on the generosity of other people. So that, I guess that would be my other big lesson learned right at the beginning of doing my own work as a consultant.
Very good. Thank you for sharing that journey with us. And there's a theme I'm hearing that you've experienced and throughout your professional life, which is these new beginnings.
Yes.
So you're always having these new beginnings. And then you even spoke to it, which is beginnings are scary.
Yes.
And what do you think, Gail, accounted for your confidence to be scared and work through it and know that everything was going to be okay when the future was very foggy?
Yeah, well, you know what? I'm not sure I knew that everything was going to be okay. I hoped that everything would be okay. As right now, when we're in the middle of the COVID crisis, I'm thinking, I hope everything's going to be okay. There's a phrase in Italian, tutto andrà bene, which means all will be well. And I have it pinned up where I can see it because, you know, like everyone else, I have very dark days. I think confidence is also something that you have to work at. And I talk about this some in the book.
Mm-hmm.
The power of self-talk and how that voice in our head. And we all have a voice in our head that I call the obnoxious roommate. That's that voice that tells you what a loser you are,
Mm-hmm.
and how you're inadequate, and how you can't figure out how to do this, and how you should just go get in bed and pull the covers over your head. And that's a voice that everybody has, and we have to learn how to deal with it. And there are tactics for dealing with that. So, I mean, I have that voice along with everybody else, and it's a constant struggle to be aware of it and then to confront it. And one of the keys to that, I think, is to think to myself, if I were talking to somebody else about this problem, if it was their problem, would I ever talk to them like this?
Mm-hmm.
And the answer is almost always no. I would not be saying to them, you're a stupid idiot, you should just give up. Mm-hmm. So then why am I talking to myself like that? And that helps me to push that obnoxious roommate back into the closet where she belongs. So I think that's a piece of it is learning tactics for identifying when you're sabotaging yourself. And the other part, I suppose, is paying attention to your successes.
Yeah.
The small ones and the big ones, the past ones and the ones today. I made it through today without yelling at anybody. Good for me. You know, whatever it is, you know, under the pressure we're under right now, all of us feel like yelling at other people fairly regularly. I know I do. And if I manage to get through the day and I haven't yelled at anybody, that's very good. So small successes and big ones, because that gives me an impression of myself as a successful person who has the potential to succeed again.
Very good, Gail. I really appreciate the tips. And the last tip, especially, I think is really resonating for me, especially when now we're working from home, right? Mostly, and we tend to be more isolated. Virtually, yes, but it's not the same as when we're able to connect in with our colleagues and just recognizing that even little successes are something to celebrate right now.
Absolutely, I agree. But you're touching on something else that I think is critical in general when you're starting out in a new endeavor, and especially right now, which is, for me, everything about being an entrepreneur is wonderful, except two things.
Mhm.
I love being my own boss. I love not having to go to idiotic time-wasting meetings and all that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
The bad two things are income insecurity. You just don't know from one week to the next, from one month to the next, what your income is going to be. You got to learn how to deal with that. And the other is loneliness.
Hmm.
Because if you're running your own business, even you have friends and colleagues, nobody else is invested in your business the way you are. If you have partners, it's a little different. But if you're running your business on your own, loneliness is a reality. And then you have to think about how you're going to build community, how you are going to find other people who are cheerleaders for you, who you can trust to understand. You can trust to tell them what the obnoxious roommate is saying, and they'll tell you that's idiotic. Don't pay attention to that. And who struggle with the same can share with you real life solutions that have worked. So, you know that I have started the Chicago Coaching Roundtable.
Yes.
Most of us in the roundtable are small, one-person offices and businesses, and we get together once a month to talk about the work that we do.
Mhm.
And those of us who've been in that community for years, it's a real source of strength for us. Not only the meetings, but the context that we make in between, and the ways in which we can reach out to each other and say, hey, I need a tool that measures emotional intelligence. Do you know a good one? And other people step forward and offer that information. So I think building community is a crucial part of this as well.
Okay. Very good. All those ingredients for a rewarding and successful profession, personal life and professional life, are wonderful. So you've touched upon always growing, new beginnings, being scared, getting out of your comfort zone, the generosity of others, right? Building those relationships,
Mm-hmm.
confidence in yourself, being okay with uncertainty, and building that sense of community. So all of those are nice themes that I think transition us into talking about. Those are all ingredients in curating your life.
Yeah, I'd love to spend a little minute talking about curating your life.
Here's the book so people can see it.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, I have it. And of course, I'd love to hear what you'd like to share. Um, and as you know, and as I look at the book, and one of the chapters that always really jumped out to me that I was hoping maybe you could touch upon for the listeners is deciding what's important.
Yeah. So maybe I'll take just a brief moment to summarize what that means. When I say curating your life, what am
Yes.
I talking about?
Mhm.
Because in my whole career, when I was working with clinical clients and now when I'm working with executives, there was a problem that stretched over these two very different populations of people. And that was constantly feeling overwhelmed, inadequate, exhausted, and like I'm not meeting people's expectations. Doesn't matter if you're a global executive or a stay-at-home parent. And meanwhile, we've been talking about work-life balance for decades.
Yeah.
And nobody I've ever met, including me, has a balanced life. We believe other people do, because some people make it look as if they've got it all together. But I talk to those people and they don't have it all together. They're just as shaky underneath as the rest of us. So I thought, what if we found a different model, a different way of thinking about how we can manage our energy for the things that are really important? And it seemed to me, if you think about what a museum curator does when he or she sets out to design an exhibit, first of all, the person has to know what's the exhibit about. You can't design a good exhibit if you don't know what it's about. Then secondly, if you take all the beautiful things the museum has and you put them all into your exhibit, you will have a cluttered mess, not an exhibit that speaks to anybody. So the first decision is what's not going to go in the exhibit. It's beautiful stuff, it's wonderful, but it's not in this exhibit. It doesn't fit in what this exhibit is about. The second step is what's going to go into the exhibit, but it's not the main thing. It goes off in a side room somewhere where people who are really interested can go and look at it, but it doesn't sit in the main hall. And then finally, what are the one or two or three pieces that are the big deal pieces that capture the essence of what this exhibit is about? What are those? And I thought, if we think about our energy in the same way, that says three decisions. One is, what am I not going to do? It might be wonderful. It might be, the stuff that's stupid and ugly, we're not doing it anyway. But the stuff that's, we'd like to do it, or other people would like us to do it, but it doesn't fit in what my exhibit is right now. Saying no to that stuff, maybe later, but not now. Then the second step is the most difficult for most people, which is there's stuff that has to go into the exhibit that is my life, but it's not the most important stuff. And for that stuff, I can choose to be just good enough. I don't have to be perfect. I don't have to be great. It just has to be good enough. In fact, when I want to irritate people, I call that embracing mediocrity.
Mm-hmm.
There are a lot of things I do in my life that are mediocre, and that's good enough. And if you do those two things, you say no to the stuff that doesn't belong, and you accept and choose mediocrity for the things that gotta be there, but they're not that important, then you will have the energy for your greatness, for what your life is about, your passions, your talents, the things that really matter to you. So that's the model in a nutshell. The model is simple. Actually doing it is hard, but it is doable, and it's working for people. So that's what the book is about. So you wanted to focus then on deciding what's important.
Yeah,
Right?
it's so helpful, and I love that analogy. And so I've been in business 3 years and find that's something I go back to now. It's especially when you're still relatively new, start trying to figure all this out. You want to do everything,
Right?
and you can't. It's what fits in the exhibit. So
Right.
that's one of the lessons in your book I found really helpful. So thank you for sharing that with
Sure.
everyone.
Sure.
And we're drawing near the close of our time together. So before we do say goodbye, what else, about your book and some of these lessons that you would really like to share with our viewers that we haven't touched upon yet?
I guess what I would share is one little trick that I have found helpful and that I think your viewers might. When somebody comes to me and says, Gail, here's this wonderful project or this new initiative, we'd like you to be involved in this. And I think, oh yeah, that's great. I have learned to say to myself, okay, Gail, you can take that on. What are you going to do less of?
Yeah.
Because my plate is full. I don't have a lot of time where I'm sitting around thinking, what do I do with myself? And just about everybody I know is very busy. Our energy is at full capacity. So if I want to take on this new project, what am I going to do less of? And if I cannot think of something that I am willing and able to do less of, I can't take on the project. And it is a way of protecting myself from that overcommitment thing that we so often do. And by the way, it's partly about talking about energy, not time. You can always kid yourself that you can find the time to do something, but to say, do I want to put my energy into that? And if so, what am I going to do less of?
Mm-hmm.
That is one of the key mental disciplines for curating your life.
Yes, I love that, Gail. And that just resonates with me so much. The idea of it's energy, not time.
Yes.
So that's a lovely thing, I think, to end on.
Great.
And I appreciate you very much. I appreciate you joining me today and sharing all of your wonderful thoughts and experiences, and also some key points from the book. There's a lot more in the book.
Yes.
And I'm going to hold it up again. You can get it on Amazon, Curating Your Life, and it's wonderful. So whether you're a coach, whether you're a leader, whoever you are, I highly recommend the book. And what I really appreciate too is throughout the book, your use of analogy and story makes it very adaptable, right? And easy to apply.
Well, thank
So
you so much for inviting me, Susan. It's been a pleasure to be here. I'm really honored. So thank you very much.
thank you. Have a great rest of the day.